Hey, welcome, listeners. Today, I have the distinct honor and privilege of inviting a great friend of mine on the show, a top platinum award winning real estate agent and broker, agent out of Virginia, broker out of North Carolina, Jason Bear with Own with Jason. Welcome to the show today, Jason.
Thanks so much, Paul. It's so good to see you. It's so good to be on the podcast.
Yeah, man. It's great to have you on here. I know it's been hard to get our schedules together because you've been so busy, which is what successful people do, right?
Well, it's a good thing. So I'm not going to complain about it, but I'm glad we did able to get it worked out here so we can actually get on this thing and talk a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Jason, before we start getting into real estate and all that you're seeing and doing and that sort of thing, you've got a really interesting background, much more interesting than a lot of people that I know. You spent a lot of time in the music industry. So, talk a little about your background, just to entertain us and inform us on where you're coming from here today.
Well, I do have an interesting background. I came out of a very religious family, spiritual family that my dad was a pastor. So we moved around quite a bit. And my family also, in conjunction with doing ministry, were very musical people. And I started singing in church around age 4 or 5. And that developed into a going on to college and studying vocal performance. I was a vocal performance major. And then in that, I was writing music kind of on the side, didn't really tell many people about it. So in my
Mm.
first couple years of college, that sort of kind of came to the forefront. And so I sort of launched into pursuing a career in the music industry that was pretty successful and led me through for about 20 plus years in the music industry and had some successes, a couple of number one Billboard charting songs, number
Wow.
two, and a few that kind of charted on down the track as well. So yeah, it was interesting. I got to meet a lot of interesting people, work with a lot of great talent. I work out the Nashville scene for many years. And then I hit my 40s. And from there I was like, okay, we gotta make a change. Something's gotta give here. So just a lot of transition, but it was good. It was a fun run.
Wow. So yeah, I can only imagine, the experiences that you had. And I assume you traveled a lot with that, with the musical performances and whatnot.
I did. Yeah, I was gone quite a bit. In fact, we made the choice to kind of stay in the Chesapeake area, which is where I currently am, and not to uproot and move our kids around anymore, but just to kind of stay put. And so, because we made that choice, I had to adjust in other areas, which meant so I would stay home a couple weeks, and then a couple weeks out of the month, I was either in Nashville or on the road touring. And so, I was a lot of flying in and out, and just kind of being gone quite a bit. And I would say that I loved it. I really did. I enjoyed it. There's something about that I still to this day miss. But at the same time, it was kind of tough. The end of the 2 weeks in of being home, you have to go back on the road and you got like, oh, I'm going to miss my family. I don't want to miss this at home. But then at the same time, I was torn because I didn't want to miss being on the road. And I loved meeting with the fans, meeting with people everywhere I would go. And so it was always that tug of war going on
Tension.
inside. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Well, you did it for a long time, obviously very successfully. So why the switch? Because you got in your 40s, but you chose real estate. So why this crazy industry?
Yeah, it's funny because I thought initially that the leap from the music industry into real estate was going to be like this vast difference. And trust me, in some ways there are differences, but for the most part, the principles are still the same in a lot of ways. And we could talk more about that in a minute. But one of the reasons I thought about real estate was because though I came from a ministry family, my dad was also a North Carolina broker. My
Uh-huh.
grandfather was a North Carolina broker. So they also are involved in real estate and still this day own a lot of real estate property all around the Charlotte area. And so it had always kind of been in the back of my mind thinking, hey, real estate might be one of those things that would be fun to do. I like it.
Mm.
We like design. My wife and I both do. We like to see properties, even sometimes when I'm traveling to a new area. And I did this on the road, even in my music career, but I would love to go see what the the infrastructure was in the sense of the houses in that area. And I loved going and seeing what people had or what they would build or what their design was. And so that was always a piece of interest. And then at the same time I was making this transition, I had a friend at my church that was a Virginia broker. And she said, hey, look, I think you need to try real estate. I think you could be really good at this. I think it would
Mm.
be a good fit for you. And I kind of was like, maybe so. It might be good, but I still had the doubt in the back of my mind, and still to this day, years later, that doubt's still in the back of my mind. But I said, okay, yeah. And what do I have to lose? I mean, it's like at this point, it's this music career thing has sort of reached its peak for me, and
Mhm.
I was tired and getting older, and the music industry is a very interesting world, especially for someone getting older and losing their hair and not looking any younger. So I said, okay, why not? So I took the leap of faith, and she was very, very, very instrumental for me. And I still give her praise to this day
Mhm.
for all that she did for me in my career, but helped me get through school. It took me about, I don't know, a few weeks to kind of, I think it was November of 2017 when I walked away from my last record deal
Yeah.
into real estate school. And I said, I'm just going to give it a shot. And I took a few weeks, did the course and test passed. And by December 17th of 2017, I had my license in hand and
Mm.
I just hit the ground running and never
Yeah.
looked back.
Yeah. Well, that's fantastic. And I know you hit the ground and you've had a great run. You've been really successful. I mean, I know a lot about your business and we've talked offline before many times. And what do you credit that to? I mean, the fact that because I know there's a lot of realtors out there, it takes them a long time to get going, or maybe their expectations are not proper where they get, you turn on the TV and you see the $1 million listings and all that. Everyone thinks they're going to
Yeah.
have this amazing lifestyle of freedom and and
Right.
wealth as a realtor, but there's a reality to it too, right? I mean,
Right. Yeah, I think it's all about. I think bottom line for me is I think one of the things that helped me so much was I just knew a lot of people.
mhm,
And though I'm not a native of the area that I live in, I've only been here maybe 16 years,
mm,
but I've known a lot of people in that 16 years because of serving on committees and serving in churches and doing and knowing a lot of people from the music career. That sort of kind of helped me significantly in my initial launch into the industry because one of the things that my old broker told me when she brought me into real estate, she's like, just make a list of every person you know,
mm,
write them all down, get their names, their emails, their phone numbers, everything, and just put it all down because as you make this transition, you need to call every one of them and say, hey, I know you followed me through this, but this is a new venture for me. This is where I'm going. And I want to be there to help you, serve you in whatever way that you need. And I did that faithfully and it paid off. And within my first year, I came in right out of the gate in my first month with like 3 clients and ended up selling 16 houses my first year, which is
God,
not a ton, but it's also not on the
it's
low
not bad.
end,
That's right.
So and then it was interesting because I you know self-deprecation comes in and you're like, hey, can I really do this? Am I good at this?
Mhm,
Whatever. But I think the important piece for me was just being good at people.
mhm,
And no matter what, at the end of the day, I love people. I'm a big talker.
hmm,
And sometimes you get running away, loose lips. They'll just keep going. They'll just keep talking and talking and talking. But people like that. They let you know that you care and that
yeah.
you're connecting to them and communication and conversation is such a great way to do that. And so I think those things combined is what kind of helped me, make a successful transition from that music world into the real estate world.
Well, I think, yeah, I mean, I think that's true. I mean, people want to know that you care. They don't really want to know how much you know until they know that you care, right?
Right. That's right.
And you've got that heart for people, and it is funny you talk about the whole the self deprecation or that little doubt devil that sits on everyone's shoulder. I mean, the thing
Yeah.
is, everybody deals with that, right? And
You
even
do.
if you've had a year under your belt, 16 homes, I mean, your first year in the business, and that was pre-COVID, right? So I mean, it wasn't like
Yes.
they were given, rates were down to 0% and everyone wanted a home and whatnot.
Right.
That was in a real sort of normal environment coming in.
Right.
You just that's part of being a successful entrepreneur though, and business person. I mean, you have to everyone feels the fear. There's a great book out there I read years ago, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, right? Kind of thing.
Oh yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It's
So
it's definitely the pressure of knowing that I really kind of don't have a choice. I mean, I'm leaving my music career, jumping into something that I've never really dabbled in before, but I think I could be good at this.
mhm.
But at the same time, knowing, hey, I've got kids going to college, I've got a mortgage to pay, I've got all these things. It's like it's either you're going to or you're not going to, and you need to
Right.
learn real quick if this is going to work. And so thankfully, launching that first year and closing 16 deals. In fact, the funny thing was I felt like because in the music world, I made good money, but I spent more than I made. It's
Yeah.
like you got to keep up appearances. And that's one of the big comparisons between the music world and real estate. It's like, it's a profile thing. You've got to constantly be in the face of people, letting them know that
Hmm.
you're there to serve them and to help them. Same thing, music world. If you disappear, it's like out of sight, out of mind, people don't call on you. And so I took some of the same principles I had in the music industry and applied them into the real estate side of thing. And I think that really worked for me with social media, with just marketing in general. I think it just really had a massive impact on my career. And the self deprecation came in near the end of that year when I had time to slow down and think, wait, is this just luck of the draw or am I really good at this or not? And then between the next year when it rolled around, so after that first year selling gypsy houses, January rolls around, and from January to like May and April timeline, I feel like I couldn't find a transaction. Like I feel like I couldn't get anybody to listen to me. I was like, oh, you better hang on now. This is over.
Yeah.
Everybody has those moments where you think, okay, we've reached the peak. It's time to move on,
Right.
and, and I just kind of doubted seriously that I could keep doing it. But then I buckled down, made some changes, and took some advice from some other people that spoke great into my life, some other brokers that I came in relationship with. And they said, look, just trust the process.
Hmm.
Here are the things that you need to be doing. And if you trust the process and you do these things every single day, give it like 90 days
Hmm.
and just trust the process. And I did that. I totally restructured everything. And I gave it 90 days, like they said, and at day 89, it's like somebody yanked the sheets off. And between October of 2019 and December of 2019, I closed 17 transactions
Mm.
in just that one quarter.
Right.
And they weren't just transactions, but I mean, I had like that probably at that point, the highest sell of my career, which is like an $800,000 house.
Right.
And then it just kept escalating. The next year rolls around and what comes in 2020? COVID.
Yeah.
So we get to COVID and I was trucking. I was like, this is good. COVID hits. I'm like, well, there goes my career. That's going to be over. I think that's what most of us thought. And I had literally maybe 5 to 10 days of like downtime.
Yeah.
And I promise you, Paul, like it literally was like electrifying. My
Yeah.
phone started ringing off the hook.
Yeah.
And within the first 2 months of COVID, I had 20 houses under contract.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it just kept going. I closed 40 transactions that year. The next year I hit 50 transactions. And this year it's going on even further. So it's just continuing to grow and grow and grow. But I think it's because I'm staying so faithful in the small practices, the small daily practices every day. And
Mm.
if you don't stay on top of those things and
Mhm.
stay on top of reaching out to the people and taking time to show them that you care, it's all for nothing.
Man, that's awesome. Yeah, I call it the daily success plan. I mean, what are the
Yes.
daily non-negotiables, right? You've got to do with
Mhm.
all the noise of everything going on around you. Because the more successful you get, the more noise there is, right?
Right. Absolutely.
So you have to create, and I know you've done this, maybe you could talk about this. You've put positions on your team, your organization to handle some of that stuff, to take some of the noise off your plate so you could stay in your lane, right? And be focused
Right.
on really at the end of the day, what makes the difference for your success.
Correct. Correct. You have to think about what can I, one, when you start getting to a certain place when you're so busy, you've got to find out what can you delegate and how can you delegate that
Hmm.
so that you can stay on top of the daily relationships that you need, especially from realtor standpoint. Like daily relationships are what's most important. I've said this numerous times and I've had a lot of conversations with some great agents that I work very closely with. And we see this a lot in the church world. We see this a lot in businesses and we see it in a lot of other areas. But if you're not focused on the things that you don't have versus some of the things that you do, because a lot of times people are just looking at, oh, this is all that I have. They're only looking at what's inside their hands,
Hmm.
not looking at what they could have or putting their focus out where they need to on the horizon. If we're not constantly reaching for that new thing to refill our database,
Hmm.
refill our business, refill so many places in our business, then we dry up, die. And there's nothing new for that next year or that next season or that next moment in life that will continue to carry our business forward to the next level. And so you get busy. And that's the hard part is like when you get busy, and I'm terrible about this because I'm I'm the most ADHD person you've ever met in your life. I mean, I'm all over. My wife is constant and secure, and I'm just like a
You
roller
married
coaster.
well then, right?
Yes, yeah, I'm up and down every day,
Yeah.
and I always got problems and issues and drama because that's just how I am. It seems to follow me. But if you don't stay focused on those daily routines
Mhm.
and those structures that you have, and it's funny because I made some transitions in my career back in early 2018, or no, sorry, 2019, that sort of set me up for some of those successes. One, I started diving back more into my own self, like educating and
Mm.
reading more regularly
Mm.
because I'd stepped away from that for a long time. And because I'm so ADHD, I don't like to read it. Because if I
Yeah.
do read, I'm going to have to read that same paragraph like 3 times to remember what it said or to get anything out of it.
Yeah.
So that becomes a big thing. But I did learn to dive back into that, start picking up books that were better for me to become better at my career and at helping people or knowing or kind of dissecting who I am
Mhm.
so that I can better serve other people. Because if we don't know who we are and we don't know why we react a certain way or why we do this or why we do
Mhm.
that, or, then it's also hard because we're so caught up on our own personal
Yeah.
things that we can't get past that to even help someone else. And when you're trying to build a business and you're trying to help people, you got to get yourself out of the way because that's the problem with a lot of us. I know it's my biggest thing is sometimes I stay in my own way.
Mm. Yeah, that's for sure. So you started to really kind of made the commitment to yourself to grow, to educate yourself, to read, to
Mhm.
self-reflect and all that. What's another one or two things maybe you did at that period to kind of reboot Jason 2.0?
Daily blocking again, because I am such an ADHD person, I have to have a schedule.
Yeah.
And even though I have that schedule now, I will come up with an emergency on the fly. Let me tell you. So you have to protect against that.
Yeah.
Anybody who works around me close enough can tell you all day long. I mean, I will be like, oh, I've got this on the calendar today, but I have to push that off to the side because now I have this. And this is more important, you know? And sometimes somebody has to tell me to go out and go shopping right now is not more important. You have
Uh,
to stick with what you have on the schedule. It's not that that's really the thing, but still,
yeah,
there are things that do come to the forefront sometimes. You have to
sure.
learn to say, because it becomes triage. It's like, what's the emergency thing that you really do need to deal with, or what can wait? And so I learned to start blocking my day so that I can come up with a daily routine. So every morning at a certain time, I will get up and I will, I try to work in all my structures. So if I'm going to do the gym, I do it early in the morning. I go from there to set up shop somewhere. And a lot of times I like to do it outside of my home because if I'm at home, I get busy with house projects and that
Yeah,
doesn't help me. So I
right.
set up shop somewhere else a lot of times and I will do my things like my early either devotional or reading of some sort. Then I spend time doing my daily handwritten notes, answer some emails. I have a morning routine instructor that I have blocked every single day. That's the same routine day in and day out. And then I leave some blank space in my schedule. That way I
Mhm.
can fill it with the things that need the other attention. But that's one big piece is that daily blocking. There's so many others. Gosh, I mean, it's crazy because one is this is another piece. So I came out of the music industry. Music industry people a lot of times are night owls. Like, I mean, we'd be in the studio working at midnight
Yeah,
somewhere, and then
yeah.
we'd get to bed at 2 in the morning and sleep till 10 a.m. But in a business world, the way that I am, I can't be successful if I'm staying up till 2 o'clock in the morning
Right.
and not getting up and get my day going till afternoon. I mean, you got to get up and make time. So I had to rework my schedule to where I'm up at 6 a.m. every morning.
Yeah.
Do you know how hard that is for like somebody like approaching 50
Yeah.
and,
Well, wait a minute.
just,
I'm
yeah,
a
for
little few
real.
years older
Y-
than that, and I
y-
get up at 5:30, but I was never on the Nashville or
Oh
the
yeah,
rock
but
the music circuit.
Yeah, so, I mean, hey, but I mean, it's just changing that and
Yeah.
getting
Yeah.
back to a place to where
Yeah.
you can like, really get into that daily routine. And so that
Yeah.
was one thing, having to change that schedule and then learn to daily block. That was a big, big, big improvement for me.
Well, I push your buttons over that a little bit and kind of joke with you a little bit, but it is a big thing. I mean, you completely flipping your routine and you've done this for 25 years, right? In your body, you're used to
Yeah.
this and you're like, but recognize the fact that it wouldn't work. And a couple of things I picked up on that was you went to some people that you trusted, some mentors, some coaches, some people that had been down the road before you. And I talk all the time about how important it is to, I mean, you can try to figure it out yourself and reinvent the wheel, but you don't really know. Was it
Right.
Einstein that said you can't solve the problem within the problem? You have to get outside of the problem
Right.
to
Right.
solve it,
Right.
you
Right.
know?
Right. I totally agree with that. And this is what I've told people for years, even in my music career. I feel like if you feel like you should be doing something, then what you need to do is you need to find someone that's doing what you want to do,
Hmm.
and line yourself with that person.
Yeah.
Find that mentor, find that coach, that person that can speak into you and help you look at things from a different perspective. Because if we are relying on ourselves, we're
Yeah.
only going to be so successful. We're only going to get so far because one, we're not really ever 100% fully honest with ourselves.
No.
And sometimes it's easy to make excuses or come up with, a reason why we need to adjust a certain way or whatever. But if you find a coach that can keep you honest, a mentor that can be straight up with you and help you understand and identify the places that you need change in your life,
Hmm.
you'll be more successful in that. I'm a big, big, big advocate of having a mentor or a coach.
And asking the hard questions, right? Like
Correct.
somebody, like you said, you're not going to be 100% honest with yourself, but the questions are, why did you do that, Jason?
Right.
Or why
Right.
do you think that?
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
you
And
have to
that's,
defend it, right?
yes, you do. You do. And it makes you take a long, hard look at yourself. So
Yeah.
for instance, in my career, I do have a one-on-one coach that I meet with biweekly and even more than that if need be. But I do run up everything up the ladder with that coach. I'm like, hey, here's what I'm doing. Here's
Yeah.
what we're looking at. Hey, why do you think I'm doing this? I've got this to handle, but I keep putting it to the back burner.
Yeah.
And then we do a personality analysis and all that. So I know why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I can then recognize those things. And then I can all of a sudden now start reworking my mind
Hmm.
to be better every single day at what I'm doing so that I can be better for people. Cause at the end of the day, what's it all about? It's about helping. I don't care
Right.
what you're doing. You're going to
Right.
make the world a better place. And that's how I see it. And so if I'm not improving myself so that I can prove something else,
Hmm.
why am I doing it?
And you'll never rise above your own self in terms of your level of success. You're going to be
Right.
the lid. John Maxwell talks about that in leadership books. We're the lid on our growth, our organization, our future. And so we'll never get bigger than our own head and self. So you're absolutely right. Well, look, switching gears a little bit, talk about in terms of real estate itself. What are you seeing, in the market as we're turning the quarter on 2022? We've sort of closed the books on the crazy COVID. I mean, we're still feeling sort of the back end slap of that, but
Sure.
I mean, we're heading into 2023. There's been a tremendous adjustment, I think, with people, expectations, attitudes, the markets, and all that. But what do you see? What's working? What do you expect to happen? Rub your crystal ball. Tell us what's going on, man.
Definitely in the past couple of months, we have seen a major shift from where things were just back even in August timeframe.
Hmm.
We went from, I mean, you list a house, I mean, it's gone in 24 hours. I mean, that thing would get spoken for with 15 people still standing in line behind them.
Yeah.
They paid way over. I mean,
Mm.
I had clients this through this past year that were offering 90 and $100,000 over ask and still losing their offers. And so it was an insane world. I mean, it every day was like, what's today going to be? Cause I mean, you saw things that I never would have ever imagined that we would have seen in the real estate market, but it was interesting. But in August, September timeframe, things really started to slow down. Of course, we all know rates started to come up, and as rates come up, the buyer pool kind of dwindles. And so now you went from all these buyers. There was one point where I think late summer, I had over 30 active buyers
Mm.
running at one time. And I had probably anywhere from maybe 12 to 15, 16 listings kind of in queue at the moment. And I remember thinking, wow, this is really crazy. I mean, of course, even with listings, because our inventory has been super low, especially in the
Right.
Hampton Roads market, we've been really, really low in our inventory. And it was crazy because even with inventory that low, to feel like I had that number of listings sitting there in queue, I was like, wow, I feel like I'm hitting a jackpot here.
Yeah.
And then all these buyers that were active, I was like, this is crazy. I mean, I was writing offers every day. It was like multiple offers. And it was insane. And then all of a sudden that buyer pool went from like that active 30 buyers down. I mean, almost overnight, it
Mm.
dropped to like 10
Mhm.
because all these people that were able to buy because the rates were so low. Now we're not able to buy anymore. And so they just kind of just, hey, I've got to pull out of this game. I can't compete anymore. And so even though we saw the market slow down and all the way over ask, offers that were coming in, that all slowed down. And now we're actually seeing people getting closing calls for selling these things, but it's still shifted because, the difference on a mortgage at a 4% interest rate versus a 6 or 7% interest rate is quite significant for some people. So you now have all these listings now starting to come on the market. So inventory is improving. It's still very low,
Yeah.
but it is improving. But the buyer pool is continuing to dwindle. And so these listings now, we're seeing them in Virginia. It's it's still moving somewhat, which is good because inventory is so shy. But in Carolina, you cross the state line, because I do North Carolina as well. It's a different story. There, we've got 3 to 4 months of inventory.
Uh-huh.
And so because of that, and very few buyers
Mm.
down there, you list a house. I mean, I'm telling all my listings right now, I'm like, look, this is going to be a crawl at this point. Best thing you can do is settle in, be
Mhm.
patient, pray, meditate, whatever you need to do,
Yeah.
and just let's just take it a day at a time,
Yeah.
and just hope for the best. I mean, and it will sell. That's the thing
Yeah.
about it. At some point, it's gonna move. There's a buyer for every house when the price is right. That's one thing my first broker used to say to me all the time too. So, but it's just one of those things that you just it's settling in and realizing, yes, there is a shift in the market.
Mhm.
I do think we are still somewhat in a seller's market,
Mhm.
but again, it just takes you being more patient,
Yeah.
and buyers are asking for more. There's some things that are happening that on the market right now, but I think if a seller will be mindful going into it to make sure their house is a little more show ready, to do everything that they can to be a little bit ahead of the game. I mean, because back in the summer, it didn't matter. Lord, you
Right.
could throw a matchbox up on the counter and put a for sale sign on it and somebody was going to buy it. But
Right.
that world has changed now. So I think you got to be strategic. You got to plan. You got to talk to your realtor, talk to the person that's helping lead the way. And again, here's the hardest thing I tell you all the time. You're hiring someone that is a professional in this industry.
Mm.
It's what we
Mhm.
do every single day.
Right.
You got to trust that person.
Right.
Trust them. Trust the process. Trust that person. And hopefully you've got a great realtor. Not, I can help you. you know, but yeah,
Right. Right. Well, I mean, what I see happening in addition to that, because I'm on the finance side, is rates did peak in the August, September, early October period of time. They've since started coming back down.
they
So I
have.
think,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, we're seeing now we're in the fives on 30 or fixed rate loans now, and I believe by the end of the first quarter, probably right around five, because the inflation numbers are starting to abate, and it's just a
Right.
process to kind of work through the system.
Right.
So we're seeing that. So it's not like we're going to go the prognosticators. If it bleeds, it leads. We're going to go to 10% interest rates. The market's going to collapse, and people are
Mhm.
selling headlines left and right. Didn't happen. Not going to happen. This is not a repeat of 2007 and 2008.
Right.
So it's going to
Right.
be interesting when the buyer pool starts to figure out that, okay,
Right.
yeah, it's actually improving. There's still very little inventory on the market. We turn the corner into the spring, and now we have spring buying and people moving for school. And I
Right.
mean, maybe we're going to be in a situation where, hopefully not like it was
Right.
last year, but this going to be, it might get a little frenetic at that point again.
Well, and the interesting thing too is that new construction inventory, remember, even back in the early 2000s when we saw the crash, new construction inventory was like at this massive peak,
Yeah.
and then it just fell off to nothing.
Yeah.
And we are still working our way back. And so the new
Yeah.
construction inventory is still low enough to help us combat a massive crash the way that we saw it back in those
Yeah.
days.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I have some builder clients that were building. Well, one in particular was building about 6 new homes a month, and when we got into the August timeframe, they paused. They started pulling back, and they would only build stuff that was like pre-sold, or they knew they could turn in like 30 days.
Hmm.
When the rates started coming up, they learned from before, like, okay, we're just going to pull back and with the market kind of see what happens. And so yeah, they learned the lesson from '07 and '08. And I
Right.
think that's the
Right.
story nationally too, from
Right,
what I
right.
hear.
Yeah. You see a lot of people, I think there are, I mean, a lot has changed since those days, just one in financing. I mean, people were getting loans with handshakes back in the days, it seemed like, and now it's just,
Yeah.
it's a different world. I mean,
Yeah.
underwriters, and they're, the
Mm.
process is such a different process
Yes.
that's helped build some protections for us for sure.
Yeah, there's a ton of protections in there. It's once 2010, once they cleaned up the chips from everything that fell, it turned the corner. Yeah, those crazy loans aren't out there anymore by any
Right.
stretch of the If you could
Right.
fog a loan, they give you, fog a mirror, they give you a loan, but
Right.
not anymore. Well,
That's so true.
Jason, tell us what do you do for fun, man? You're obviously so busy and all that. Anything interesting?
Well, I mean, it's been interesting because the past couple of years has been a big thing for us. We've had a lot happen in our family. So my daughter got married last year. My kids have been in college. I mean, my daughter getting married, and then we sold and bought a house last year. And so there's been a lot of change, a lot of movement in our world. But travel is a big thing for us. We love to
Mm,
travel. We like to go now. My daughter lives in Georgia now, so we like to go travel and see them. We still have friends and family in different places that we go to. So even recently, we've been to Maine, we've been to Tennessee, we've been to Florida, we've been to Georgia, we've been all these different places just in the past, few months, including going to the Bahamas, other things all in the past little bit. But so travel's a big thing for us. It's a good way for us to kind of unplug a little
mhm.
bit, as busy as we are. And the good thing about real estate is I can kind of carry my business on the road with me. So it gives me and affords me the opportunity to be able to go and travel quite a bit. So that's a big thing. I think that my family is a big piece of fun for my life. So just that ability to be with them and travel with them and do things like that. That's a big piece of it. Other than
Yeah.
that, I mean, who knows? I mean, I can make pretty much anything fun. That's for sure.
Yeah, you're a fun guy, so you just have fun in whatever you do, right?
I try to.
Awesome, awesome. Well, Jason, we're pretty much out of time, man. Tell everyone that needs a great realtor in North Carolina or Virginia, how can they get up with you, man?
I have a website. That's one of the quickest, easiest ways to get to me. So that's ownwithjason.com.
Hmm.
That's OWN with Jason.com. You can go there, and all my social media links, all my contact links, everything are there. I can help you from there. And on any social media platform is Own with Jason as well. So I'm available. I can help. Virginia, North Carolina, easy thing. And even if it's out of the area, I've got a massive pool of referral network that I can pull from and connect you. I've got referrals happening in Arizona right now, New York, Florida, Georgia, South Carolina. They're all over the place. So I can help you no matter where you are.
Excellent, excellent. And we'll get that in the show notes. So there'll be links and phone numbers and all
Perfect.
that jazz for you. So
I love
Jason's
it.
been awesome, man. Thanks for coming on today.
Thanks for having me and listening to me just banter on.
You bet, buddy. Have an awesome day.
You too, man.